The Silence After Roswell Part 2 of 3. This is Part 2 of 3 in the story, The Silence After Roswell. As the mystery deepens and trust in official stories phrase, the people of Roswell discover that some secrets are too heavy to carry, and that the desert remembers, even when they wish it would forget. Nights in Roswell turned quieter than ever before. After the storm, after the blue light, a heavy watchfulness spread across the land. Fear seeped into routines, porch lights left on all night, families praying around supper tables, and radios kept loud even when all they offered was static and song. Shopkeepers, who once argued over baseball and cattle prices, grew wary and private. Mind yourself became the phrase passed from mother to son, father to daughter, morning and night. Jason tried to return to normal. The fragment under his mattress kept him awake. Sometimes, late at night, he swore it pulsed with its own cold life. The odd blue glint, as he tiptoed past, made his heart clench. He thought of showing it to his father, but fear, for Jason, for himself, for something he couldn't name, kept him silent. Lucas retreated into himself. At school he was moody, chewing his pencils and ignoring questions. When Jason came around, Lucas avoided his gaze. One day Jason found his friend in the alley, hissing angrily, "Don't tell anyone." "Not ever," Jason nodded, not having the right words to promise. But the silence grew between them, thick and strange. Rumors around town multiplied, as if seeding themselves in the restless soil. More than a few families claimed to see strange vehicles, trucks or cars that seemed to disappear around empty bends, headlights blurring and then blinking out, cutting across fields where only the wind should go. The dogs barking in the night became a source of alarm. "They're not barking at coyotes anymore," old Mr. Connolly whispered in the diner. "They're barking at the sky." May caught Jesse staring long and hard at the barn some evenings. Their secret, hidden inside the flour tin, weighed more than its parts. "You think we ought to tell them?" May would ask. Jesse shook his head. Who'd believe us now? Sometimes he dreamed of that night, the pulsing light, and felt a heavy dread as he did chores in the early hours. The fields themselves seemed to resist his steps, the grass brittle, the cattle never straying close to where the earth was scorched in those geometric rings. In the darkness, more questions crept in. There were stories of lost time, ranchers coming home hours late, not knowing where they'd been. A school teacher fainted in the middle of a lesson, waking with a nosebleed and no recollection of what she'd been saying. More children drew pictures, spirals, twisted lights, tall, faceless shapes with long fingers and featureless faces. The churches brimmed on Sunday, prayers whispered for protection, for peace, for deliverance from unknowns and unseen dangers. At Dot's diner, the newcomers became impossible to ignore. Two men, both in the same gray suits, sat by the window and wrote nothing, asking bland questions of anyone who stopped by, all while watching with sharp, cold eyes. They bought pie, left it untouched, finished their coffee and moved on. One regular, Tom Rayleigh the mechanic, swore he saw them out along the Braxton Road at dusk, kneeling in the grass with strange equipment, green lights flickering between their hands. The phones were no comfort. Sometimes, mid-conversation, the line fizzled down to silence, replaced by a faint clicking or rapid, mechanical pulses. Messages were misdelivered, garbled, letters opened and resealed. People began using old tricks. Notes slipped under doors, visits by foot, conversations in fields where the wind covered their words. And always the dreams. For Jason, they turned restless. Shapes sliding across his room, blue-white flashes behind his eyelids, the rhythm of the clicking buried beneath the storm of sleep. Some mornings he woke with his sheets twisted tight around him, as if he'd fought off something only half real. He didn't know the dreams had taken hold of half the town. In church, he saw children rubbing their arms like him, blinking into the light, shivering in the heat. One late afternoon, Jason found Lucas at his fence, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched and thin. "They came to my house. Said they were from the Weather Bureau, but," Lucas shook his head, "they asked Mama if we'd seen anything out in the fields. Then one of them, they just stared at me. Kept smiling, but I felt cold, Jace. Like maybe they know." Jason dug the fragment out from under his mattress that night. By candlelight, the pattern seemed to swim. Desperate for answers, they snuck to his father's tool bench and tried every experiment they could imagine, bending, hammering, placing magnets near it. Nothing left a mark, but at intervals when Jason gripped it tightly, it made his palm ache with vibration. And once, the lamp bulb nearby flickered twice and burned hot to the touch, glowing blue at its base. During the second week after the crash, the town changed again. Rain came but skipped the Braxton pasture entirely. Puddles formed on every road but vanished in black rings by the fence. Cars trying to cross the field at certain angles sputtered to a stop, engines refusing to turn over until they were pushed free by baffled men. At the edge of the ruined soil, children swore they could feel a low buzzing in their feet, a restless, angry hum. Late one night, Jason's father came home, white-lipped, coat askew, eyes wild. "The whole airfield is on lockdown," he whispered to his wife, thinking Jason asleep. "They say something showed up on radar, came and went 3-4 times, then gone. Don't know what they're seeing. Guys taking parts off the radar machines, ordering new ones. Pilots grounded. Farmers began to find their livestock behaving strangely. Cows refused to cross parts of pasture that had never troubled them before. A piglet wandered away from its pen, vanished entirely. No tracks, no signs of violence, only the echo of a hum that wouldn't stop, high in the air and deep in the ground. One afternoon, the sheriff found a pair of uniformed men in the hardware store, rifling through bins of screws, asking the owner for unusual parts, anything not of this country. He noticed they signed their receipt with a mark, not a name, and wore no local insignia on their sleeves. That evening, the sheriff visited Jesse and May. He sat for tea as twilight pressed against the windows and said, almost as if apologizing, "If you see anything else, don't call the station. Come to me. Understand?" Then, as the crickets began their song and the familiar dark descended, a new visitor arrived. A thin, pale man in a tan suit, briefcase in hand. He claimed to be from the War Department, but his questions felt less like an interview and more like a warning. Had they told their neighbors? Had they found more debris? Did they have dreams of shapes or lights? Not even the sheriff interrupted. When the stranger left, the Braxtons felt colder than before. May locked every window herself that night, and Jesse loaded his old rifle for the first time since the war. Across Roswell, things felt tighter, stranger, as though the world was shrinking around its center. People hurried from chores, cooked in silence, and read their Bibles before bed. If someone called out in the night, no one answered. The blue light did not come again, yet, but some said you could see its shadow sweeping across the fields, shimmering just beyond sight. As the third week drew to a close, Jason and Lucas made a vow to find out what was hidden in the field and what their town was truly up against. Whatever lived in the ruins of the Braxton pasture or watched from blacked-out army trucks wasn't gone. It was waiting, and the boys, in the restlessness of youth and fear, could no longer turn away. The hot breath of late July hung thick over Roswell. No breeze touched the street or fields. Even the birds were quiet, lurking low in brush or inside barns. The world had grown slow, sticky, uneasy. Jesse Braxton found sleep impossible. Every night after May drifted off, he sat in the dark kitchen, watching lightning flicker silently in the northern sky, waiting for something he could not name. Some nights were pure black, others shimmered in uneasy colors beyond the window pane. One uneasy Friday, Lucas convinced Jason they had to return to the field. The boys, desperate for answers, waited until midnight when the whole house slept. They crept out with flashlights and the fragment in Jason's pocket, its weight a curse and comfort. The moon hid behind thin clouds, laying everything in gray and ink-blue shadow. The grass whispered beneath their shoes as they crossed the first fence, the world shrinking behind them. "As long as we don't look back," Lucas whispered, and Jason nodded, not trusting his own voice. The ruined section of pasture felt colder. Even the air's scent changed, less like dust, more like cold iron or broken batteries. The footprints of soldiers and government men had been erased by wind and time, but the circle remained, dark and bitter in the moonlight. At the center, the rings were still visible, lines burned in the soil, and, for the first time, Jason swore he could see shapes moving at their edges. Not animals, not people, just a shifting, waiting presence. Lucas tugged his sleeve. "Look there." He pointed to a small depression inside the innermost ring. The dirt was disturbed. Something glinted, another piece of the foreign debris, half buried as if the earth wanted to hide or expel it. Jason knelt to pick it up. The shard hummed with a quiet rhythm, like a distant heartbeat. For a split second, the world pulsed with blue light again. Jason's vision spun. He heard the whisper of voices, quick and sharp, not in any language he knew but full of meaning. A weight pressed against his chest, then vanished. He gasped. Lucas yanked him up. "Let's get out." But their flight was cut short. Out among the grass, a single blue orb, no bigger than a baseball, floated low, weaving aimlessly. It jerked, danced, and then darted straight toward them. The light passed over Lucas, casting his features in a ghostly hue. Jason felt an icy cold on his skin. He shut his eyes, teeth clenched and braced for a touch, a pain, an ending. But the orb spun away. It hovered over the ring for a few seconds, then zipped off over the pasture and disappeared, leaving only darkness and a memory. The boys ran until their lungs ached, crashing through the fence and bursting into the safety of Jason's yard, hearts thundering in their ears. They panted in the shadows, clutching at their knees. The shard Jason clung to was throbbing, growing warm against his skin. Inside Jason's house, no one stirred. But in the morning, Jason's mother noticed circle-shaped patches of dead grass outside the window, a sign he couldn't explain. Lucas wanted to tell someone, to shout it to the world, but both realized instinctively that it would do no good. No one would believe them. Worse, someone might try to make them forget, as surely as it happened to others in town. That day was the strangest yet. The army put the rest of Braxton's field off limits, hammering up new signs. No trespassing. Government property. Men in white coats and rubber boots appeared, poked the dirt, tested the air. Jesse watched their procession through binoculars from the barn loft, sick with dread. For the first time, he admitted to May, "I think we're in over our heads." May, pale and thin, no longer slept through the night. She kept the shades drawn. She jumped at shadows on the porch and avoided the kitchen radio, which stuttered with odd Morse-like tapping in the dead hours. Sometimes she would open the flour tin, remove the metal fragments and study them for hours, hypnotized and afraid. She felt that if she concentrated long enough, the cryptic etchings might suddenly resolve into letters or music or a cry for help. Elsewhere in town, there were fresh stories. A truck lost control by the airbase, as if something invisible had shoved its tires off the road. A pair of local boys vanished for half a day, returning home with muddy feet and dazed eyes, unable to recall where they'd been. The Methodist church windows cracked all at once during Wednesday service, shards falling in the midst of a blue glow. Flustered adults summoned the sheriff, then promptly fell silent and returned to their homes. That evening, the Braxtons received another visit, this time from a woman in a blue dress with a clipped, precise accent. She came at dusk, introduced herself simply as Miss Collins from the department. She was polite, even kind, but her eyes moved constantly, measuring and noting every mark on the wall, every shadow in the corners. She asked about their dreams, about any strange visitors or lights seen in the fields, about feelings of lost time. May answered in careful half-truths, but her hands shook on her teacup. Jesse stared at the floor, wishing he'd never found a single piece of wreckage. As Miss Collins left, she lingered outside the barn, staring into the gloom, and said softly, "Mr. Braxton, some secrets are heavier than they first appear. I hope for your sake you never learn just how heavy." The next day, Jason and Lucas compared their fragments, newly retrieved from their hiding places. Together they saw something neither had noticed before. Held side by side, the symbols lined up, connecting like a puzzle, forming shapes. Or perhaps instructions. They resolved to draw what they saw, making careful sketches and notes. That night sleep wouldn't come. Jason heard the hum persist in his dreams, and for a second he thought he saw Miss Collins's face crowned with that blue light, lips moving in silent warning. A few days later, the official story changed yet again. The radio announced another Air Force investigation, purely routine, and the major in charge held a press conference denying all rumors of foreign objects, saucers, or any unusual events. Reporters from outside Roswell appeared, listening but not believing. The tension in town thickened, the mood a tangle of suspicion and dread. But Jason and Lucas, driven by youth and the kind of courage that burns only when you know you'll soon lose it, made a new plan. There was something hidden under the field. They would find it, or at least find the answers no one else dared to seek. Exhausted and afraid, they pledged to return to the site one more time. Late one evening, before they could enact their new mission, Jason heard a strange crack outside his window. He slipped outside and found Lucas already waiting, eyes wide, clutching the two joined fragments. "Did you hear it?" Lucas breathed. A light flickered behind the barn. Then a blue-white column rose skyward, silent and bright enough to cast shadows for miles. The ground buzzed. As the two boys stared, scared but unable to move, they watched a figure, tall, limber, grayed around the edges as if half-real, step right into the glow and vanish. For a moment, everything was clear. The humming became a language, the symbols flashed bright in Jason's mind, shapes unfolding inside out like math and music together. In the next breath it was gone. The boys collapsed, overwhelmed. When they struggled home in the darkness, their heads reeled with dreams for which there were still no words. The mystery had grown, and now it was reaching out, pulling them to its heart.